Let's dive right into what is arguably the ultimate historical cold case. We are talking about a mystery that has actively defeated the brilliant minds of World War I and World War II codebreakers, seasoned linguists, and even modern, highly advanced AI algorithms. Today, in this explainer, we're opening the file on the Voynich Manuscript. To really grasp the gravity of what we're up against here, listen to this incredibly eerie warning from 1665. It was penned by a 17th century university rector named Joannes Marcus Marci. He included this in a letter when he was sending the manuscript off to a famous scholar, desperately hoping for a translation. He wrote, "Such sphinxes as these obey no one but their master." We're dealing with a text that actively, almost aggressively, resists being understood. It's a puzzle that has outlived literally every single person who has ever tried to solve it. So, how exactly do we tackle history's greatest cipher? First, we're going to examine the physical evidence. Second, we'll trace the suspects and the chain of custody. And finally, we'll dive into the statistics of cracking this unbreakable code. Starting with Part 1, the physical evidence, examining Beinecke MS 408. It is so easy to think of this as just some internet myth or a digital fabrication, but it's not. It's a very real, very tangible, physical book currently kept safely locked away at Yale University. And the physical reality of this thing is just staggering. What survives today are about 240 pages of heavily thumbed calfskin vellum. This wasn't some pristine, sacred text kept on a pedestal, you know? The parchment is soft, it shows signs of heavy, workman-like usage, almost like a highly referenced medical manual. And it's actually incomplete. Based on numbering gaps, we know it originally had at least 272 pages, meaning a good chunk is just lost to history. It even features these elaborate fold-out pages that are super unusual for the era. Now, for a long time, skeptics claimed the whole thing was just a clever modern forgery, but hard scientific data completely changed the game. Radiocarbon dating performed by the University of Arizona on those vellum pages gave us a definitive window, 1404 to 1438. This proves it is an entirely authentic early 15th century artifact. The materials, the parchment, the iron gall ink, they are all exactly what you would expect from that specific period in European history. Since the text is completely unreadable, researchers have had to divide the book into 6 distinct sections based purely on the sheer weirdness of its illustrations. You start with the herbal section, which is packed with meticulous drawings of plants, except none of them conclusively exist in nature. Then it shifts to the astronomical section, filled with zodiacs and stars. Suddenly, it becomes frantic and baffling in the balneological section, showing this dense, bizarre network of tubes, pools, and nude bathing women wearing crowns. From there, it moves into massive fold-out cosmological maps, then pharmaceutical drawings of roots and apothecary jars, and finally, dense pages of star-marked recipes. But looking really closely at this ink recently revealed a massive breakthrough. For centuries, everyone just assumed this was the manic work of a single obsessed author. But medievalist Lisa Fadgen Davis looked closely at the stylistic tells, the loops, the crossbars, the feet of the letters. Her handwriting analysis proves that 5 distinct scribes actually worked on this manuscript. That is a total paradigm shift. It means this wasn't a lone madman scribbling in the dark. It was a collaborative, community effort. All right, moving on to Part 2, Suspects and Chain of Custody, Tracing the Sphinx. Let's trace the paper trail through history to figure out who owned this artifact and who might have written it. The chronological journey of this book is completely dizzying. We've got reports that back in 1599, the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II purchased it for 600 gold ducats, which was an absolute fortune. From there, it passed to an alchemist named George Baresch in 1639, who desperately tried to get it translated. By 1666, it was sent off to the Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher down in Rome. And then, it just sat hidden in the Jesuit library for over 2 centuries until 1912, when a Polish book dealer named Wilfred Voynich rediscovered it and bought it. Ultimately, it finally made its way to Yale in 1969. Naturally, with a history that wild, theories about who actually wrote it exploded. The 2 most popular were that it was penned by the 13th century Franciscan friar Roger Bacon, or, on the flip side, that it was a 20th century hoax entirely fabricated by Wilfred Voynich himself to make a quick buck. But the science easily crushes both of these theories. Remember that radiocarbon dating putting the parchment in the early 1400s? Well, that is far too late for Roger Bacon to have written it, and hundreds of years too early to be a Voynich forgery. So where did it come from? We've got a couple of competing regional theories. Some scholars strongly point to the Italian Renaissance, specifically an engineer named Giovanni Fontana. He used substitution ciphers and drew these fantastical illustrations around 1430, which is a perfect match for our carbon dating. On the other hand, some researchers argue it originates from colonial Mexico, claiming the plants are Aztec and the underlying language is Nahuatl. Now, while that's fascinating, it's important to note that the Nahuatl theory relies on highly disputed botanical similarities and contradicts the carbon dating of the vellum. So we're really left without a definitive origin. Which brings us to part 3, cracking the unbreakable code inside Voynich's. The most crucial piece of evidence is the text itself. Let's examine the actual statistics of this writing system and see exactly why it remains unbroken to this day. We actually call the language Voynichese. The manuscript contains roughly 38,000 words, using a completely unknown alphabet of about 20 to 25 distinct characters. But what is truly mind-bending here is what linguists call the smooth ductus. The ink flows effortlessly. The scribes wrote this language fluently and confidently. There's no hesitation, no stopping to calculate a complex cipher letter by letter. Whoever wrote this was completely fluent in whatever language or system this is. Right now, experts are basically torn between 3 main hypotheses. First, the natural language hypothesis, that this is just an undocumented human language. This actually has high statistical support because the word lengths and frequencies behave exactly like real human speech. Second, the cipher hypothesis, that it's encrypted European text. This one has mixed support. Standard substitution ciphers fail completely, but more complex verbose ciphers do show some promise. And third, the hoax hypothesis, that it's all just meaningless gibberish. This actually has low statistical support, simply because the text is way too structurally complex to be random. In fact, here is the absolute strongest argument against the whole hoax theory, Zipf's law. In any natural human language, the most frequent word appears twice as often as the second most frequent, 3 times as often as the third, and so on. The Voynich Manuscript follows Zipf's law perfectly. So you really have to ask yourself, if this is just a random hoax of gibberish, how did the creator perfectly mimic the underlying mathematical rules of natural human language centuries before those rules were even discovered? And it gets even crazier. Modern topic modeling shows the manuscript actually contains 2 distinct dialects, which researchers call Voynich A and Voynich B. The vocabulary literally shifts depending on the subject matter, so Voynich A is used when discussing herbs and pharmaceuticals, while Voynich B completely takes over during the bathing and astrology sections. It behaves exactly like a real complex book with specialized chapters. So, we're left staring at this incredible question. Is the Voynich Manuscript a masterpiece of encrypted genius hiding forbidden medieval knowledge? Or is it history's most elaborate, mathematically perfect, practical joke? And this is exactly why understanding the Voynich Manuscript matters. In our modern age, where we literally have all of human knowledge sitting right at our fingertips, this singular, thumb-worn calfskin book remains a deeply humbling, unsolvable puzzle. It's a reminder that history still keeps its secrets. What do you think is hiding in those pages?